Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this interview. Pressy, thank you so much for this opportunity to interview you. So without further much ado, I will start the question and answer. Could you please tell us about yourself and what you are doing in your current job?
Sure. My name is Pressy Abraham. I am currently a senior BA or business analyst with our Salesforce team at Toll Brothers, America's luxury home builders.
I took a look at that website, actually. That was impressive. Oh, you guys should check that out. So how did you land that job?
Well, I worked with a recruiter. I actually was working with a few recruiters. I had 3 positions lined up and got to make the choice to go with Toll. I know, making a choice.
Wow.
And negotiated my starting rate, and I was actually a consultant with them first, and then I converted about 7 months later to a full-time employee.
Nice. Okay, I know that before you got into Salesforce, you were already into tech. So what was your healthcare job before you transitioned to tech?
So I went to a tech school and happened to pick the most techie healthcare option out there, which was ultrasound. So I worked heavily with ultrasound and mostly I started getting more and more on the tech side, being super user. So correcting things that went wrong in the healthcare side, setting up processes, our protocols, those were things that I tried to standardize and create digital protocols for the hospital.
Wow, you're really into tech. You had the natural knack for it. So basically that's why you transitioned to tech.
It was part of the reason.
Yeah. What were your fears before finally deciding that you were going to take that leap?
Well, my transition was basically because I had an injury. So it was extremely scary, like coming into being in healthcare for so long and then being like, okay, now I have to change to something completely different. But there was that tech tie, I went to a tech school, I had ultrasound as a tech background, but I still wasn't sure where I fit in, because when I saw Salesforce, I did graze by it in 2017, and I got scared because I watched a Udemy video, and at the end they started talking about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and I was like, oh, no. Not gonna do Salesforce. I then moved on to looking at business analysis, and I actually was a consultant for a short period of time as a project manager. Cool. And I'm like, okay, great. I have a career, this is gonna be great. No luck. 2 years, or at least a year and a half, I was sitting there with, rejection after rejection because I didn't have, my secret sauce. I got I got introduced to a colleague of mine, Bill Apostolakis, who is in the Salesforce ecosystem. And we were working together on a nonprofit where I was the VP of operations. And he's like, let's connect these dots. You have all this tech background, you'd be wonderful at Salesforce.
What a blessing that was.
Yes.
For someone to see the connection.
He saw the connections. He's like, when you were a project manager, you were working with CRMs. He's like, you have this tech background, you did ultrasound, you did process management. He's like, here are all your superpowers. And I'm like, yes, thank you, but yes, he was the one that introduced me to Salesforce and really showed me the path.
So it was no longer, no way, Salesforce.
No, because he's like, oh, you'll get there eventually if you want to, but you don't have to know HTML, CSS, all of that stuff. And I'm like, but along the way, I'd been picking it up, at least what they are, maybe not fully how to use them, but, I'm hoping that I'm going to do Rad Women Code. And so I'm going to be in their next cohort. So I'm hoping that I can put the pieces together.
Nice.
And, I don't have to fear coding anymore.
When will that cohort start? And how long does it last?
So it is a 10 week, I think, or 12 week. But it starts next week and it goes till May 15th.
Exciting.
Yeah.
HTML and CSS make things pretty.
What?
HTML and CSS make things pretty.
Yes, that's what I've got to
do. So
I did a boot camp. Yeah.
Are you looking at possibly doing like architect in the future?
I am on the architect side. So of course my spirit animal is Ruth.
That's exciting.
Yes. So Ruth is my spirit animal and, I'm looking towards the architect track. I love solving problems. I think from a healthcare perspective, we've grown we get into healthcare to help. We forget that there's a whole part of healthcare where we can't help or we're struck by process, this is what you're told to do. We're in this like little box and you can't go outside the box because that's somebody else's territory. So that's one thing, I liked about the transition is that we can make those, we're constantly making changes and we're helping other people, make their job easier. We're not stuck on like always the worst situation. Right. Because no one wants to go to a hospital, right? Like, who wants to be there?
Not really. And there's a big transition now to mostly online consult, I guess. Teleconsult, telemedicine.
Yeah.
Okay, where was I? So, how many certificates do you have now?
I have 3. Hopefully the 4th one will come this weekend.
Ooh, I hope so. When you were going for your first certificate, what were the challenges you faced?
When I started my first one, I tried to go at it alone. I think that is one of the harder aspects is when you don't have advice from other people or when you're finding it difficult you're like, I'm stuck on this problem, but I can't find my resource to get the answer. Having a study group or a mentor, someone to turn to be like, okay, I don't know what this is. Do you have a clue? And they'll be like, oh yeah, you just, go here. And it's like, it's a world of difference. I found people more so right before I passed my exam than, while I was studying. So I started getting into the ecosystem and all the Trailblazer communities once I passed. So I was like, oh man, I wish I'd known this beforehand.
It made things much better.
So much easier. Yes.
Yeah.
And finding your tribe is very, very important.
Right, I agree. And I think I have found my tribe. What were the challenges you faced before landing your first job? Salesforce Journey.
I kept getting you are overqualified and underqualified at the same time. So yes, so having volunteered and been at the higher level, making decisions for a company rather than in the trenches, making those changes in our system, it was hard to describe what my job was because my job was everything because I was making the decisions for the company. I was the SME, the subject matter expert. I was the client, but I was also the one making the changes in the system. I was the one, putting our business plan together and saying, okay, this is what we want, these are our requirements, this is what we can do to get there, and here you go, here it is, and I'm going to train you on it. So it was like end to end, I was doing everything.
That's a pretty good spectrum of your capabilities.
Right,
if I was the one hiring you, I would be like, yes, she's overqualified for this.
So it seems like I'm overqualified, but I'm like, my years of experience was low. So it was hard to explain having only a few years of experience or a few months of experience into what you really did was a few years worth of work, because in a nonprofit, things go a lot quicker.
Okay. So how was your job application process?
Ooh, it was tough. It was tough, like reinventing yourself, letting go of certain things that you are proud of, because you're like, I worked in healthcare and I did this and I'm so proud of it.
But
doesn't
you
translate.
are still...
Yeah, it didn't translate into the tech world or the business world. They want to hear how you did more, had more patience, increase the revenue. Those are the things that they want to hear. They don't want to hear that you saved someone's life or that you comforted them in the last moments of, like those are precious to us,
right?
But from a business standpoint, that's not,
doesn't matter.
No. However, the way to translate that is to take those letters that you've gotten. Those are all, good recommendations of your character and the type of passion you bring to your job. So I kind of just list them on a page and put them as like accolades, I'm like, yeah, they'll definitely recommend me. If they ever came across me as a job, they'd recommend me for this job because they know I'd put my heart and soul into anything that I do.
Okay. What is your most valuable skill as far as you're concerned? What skill that you got from healthcare experience would you consider most valuable in your role as a Salesforce professional?
I think listening. I think active listening is like understanding what the core need is. When a patient comes in, they might be complaining about one thing, but they have something completely different wrong with them. And if you start listening to their story, you're just like, I know what's going on, and you're able to come to that solution, but we always look only at the surface, right? Like, and a client could tell you they want, check boxes, and you're like, will that make sense in the long run? Or do you want free, a text area? Or do you want, like you have to like sort of think through what they really want, what they're trying to gain, and not just what they're telling you.
So you are now, it's essentially a real estate business that you're in now, right?
Yes, we're a home builder, yes.
Yes. So how do you usually go about your day-to-day work?
So a lot of meetings, a lot of communication, and a lot of translating their wants and needs and putting it into requirements, and communicating with our dev team to make sure that they give the client what they want. So a lot of dealing with people, a lot of communication, and a lot of not manipulating, but guiding the situation in the right path.
I see. Yeah. And how big is your team?
Our team is actually really small. We
really?
are 5 people. We have 2 BAs, a program manager, a admin, and an engineer.
are you looking to expand? Do you think that's the direction or?
I feel like that's a direction of most companies that are working in Salesforce, is that there's such a need, and there's it's a platform that works very well and has a lot of security involved. So I feel that that gives Salesforce an edge.
Mhm.
And once you stand up a Salesforce instance, you have a lot of maintenance and a lot of, when you see how well it works, everyone's always like, oh yeah, Salesforce is great. It's a great project. We should give this to Salesforce. We should put this on Salesforce. We should put that on Salesforce. And it just, the projects just grow. So then you need more people to continue to give these projects quickly, because of course we wanted the change yesterday, right?
Right. Leverage that tech. So how did you get into real estate coming from a totally different background? I mean, did you have prior, have you been very, very interested in real estate anyway, or was it like a totally new area?
So it's not completely new to me. My dad's a real estate agent.
Oh.
On top of his accounting degree. So it was kind of just always there that, okay, this is, what real estate is. This is things that are happening. I was always conscious of, what the market brings for housing. But I don't think that necessarily played a part in choosing Toll. My choice for Toll was mainly my team, which was all female.
Yeah.
Which was a very unique unicorn experience, to come into an interview and all I see were women. And I was like, whoa, okay,
Wow.
we're in a tech call and it's all women. And that was
in real estate, right? That's
real
rare.
estate and tech. There are two
Right.
rare birds right there.
Right.
And we're having this conversation. The first question that I asked was, what are you looking for? And they said, we're looking for a unicorn. And I'm like, this is a unicorn. I'm like, where do you have a team of all women? And they're like, oh, okay, but there's a magic to when you interview that you need to, again, active listening, right? What do they want? And what are they really looking for? And what they're really looking for was someone that fit their culture, that understood what their needs were. And their needs were somebody that listened, that heard what they had to say, and not just, like oblivious. And I'm like, I'm going to be staunch and, list all my accomplishments.
Right.
That's not what they're looking for in an interview. They're looking to see that you can grow with them, that you're able to provide them knowledge and, work with them. So I think that by giving them a laugh, I was able to gain their trust and be like, okay, now tell me, all right, what does a unicorn look like to you? Because they're not always
great tip.
Yeah, they're not always pretty and colorful. Sometimes they're white with golden horns. What's your unicorn? So let them know what, get them to tell you what they want, and then show them how you are that.
So how many interviews did you have to go through?
Oh, a lot. I kept track through an application with a Salesforce app. So I tracked my progress as to whether I did a first interview or a second interview, what they were offering. I put all of that into Salesforce, and I kept track of things. So I think once I started the application, I had about 30 interviews.
Wow.
And then it came down to, picking from the top 3.
Yeah. How long did you wait to make the final decision where you want to work for at least several years?
I made the choice in, they were very active. They were both all three companies were back and forth on the phone with me, texting me every 10 minutes going, did you make a decision? Are you coming with us? What can we do to sweeten the pot? And it is like the greatest, especially coming from healthcare where you feel like, oh, this is my only choice. Okay, I'm going to change. I'm going to change my job. This is the only choice. I'm going here. It was amazing to hear people wanting you for who you are and not because I claim to know everything or because I'm an expert in everything. It was more, I'm willing to learn and I want to learn about your company. I want to learn about you as a person, which opened up more doors than me just trying to be very, very technical.
Did you actually have to go through any technical interviews?
I did. I had to actually do a project for one of my interviews. When they ask me technical questions, I get tongue-tied.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. I can do it.
Were you put on spot for that?
Where you're put on the spot and asked those technical, and I didn't know I was going into a technical conversation.
Oh my God.
I thought it was just that, get to know you kind of thing. And so I got really nervous and I got tongue-tied and I'm like, yeah, I think that's the answer. Sure. But when he gave me the project, the results of the project were, they obviously liked it because they asked me for the third interview. But I was just when I did the project, I was like, okay, I know how to do this. This is easy, but it was knowing the technical terms for things, because I feel like a lot of times in healthcare, we're doers.
Right.
We just do things and we don't always look for what the technical term is. We just know.
Exactly. And sometimes I find myself saying something like, the thing that does this.
Mm-hmm.
It takes me a while sometimes, being an ESL, sometimes it takes me a while to remember what the proper term was. So anyway.
I've worked many nights in ultrasound where I've worked with residents and had to explain technical,
oh my God,
technical terms. And I'm like, you go, it's the middle of the night, you haven't slept for 3 days. You're like, I'm like, just look at the pictures. Don't ask questions, just look at the pictures. I'm better at writing it than I am like verbalizing it when I'm overworked or overtired, but I think, with the exams, I think knowing the technical terms is like the most important thing for those exams,
Right.
Not that, they want you to know the difference between the names. So it's definitely a different way of thinking than what we're used to, especially for people who have been in healthcare for a long period of time.
Right, I agree. So how would you compare your office culture now compared to healthcare culture?
Healthcare, I felt like we don't have the opportunity to voice our process changes or problem solving skills. We go in, we do the job that we're told to do, and then have to hand it off to somebody else, or it has to go through a process before the changes can be made, or
Rigid. Too rigid.
Too rigid. Yeah, like you would expect that you would get some, like if I'm working in ultrasound and I'm like, oh, it would be better if we did this, if we were able to get our patients, in front of our door, if we could do this as a process instead of, having to go get our patients. We're wasting, 10 minutes to go get our patient and bring them over, but making that process change was like, But in a business culture, I feel like when you suggest a change, you have a reasoning behind your change, and you're respected for having that foresight to say, oh, but I disagree. You
Mm,
can't, I feel like it's not that you can't disagree with a hospital. I just think it's harder to disagree with the hospital than it is to, in the business realm. I feel like that's what you're there for. You're there to give those alternative
mhm,
solutions to things. I wouldn't just go around saying no, but to know when you get a no, or if they don't like your solution, that there are other solutions out there that you
mhm,
can come up with. So having that available and knowing that you can present these different ideas and be valued for it is great. And I do think the culture is very much is more value to
mhm.
what you're thinking than in a hospital. It's more about what you do in a hospital than what you think.
Right. And I hate to say this, but when I was in the hospital, a lot of times when we would have suggestions, we kind of knew that they were just gonna fall on deaf ears. Or if there would be any changes, the changes would take forever before it would happen. So I'm glad that to hear that in what you're doing now, that it's a totally different case. And are you kind of like informal or formal in working with your coworkers or your team?
Oh, my team is awesome. I love them. We are very informal, very we get along well. We speak to each other about our concerns and outside world all the time. It's not always about what's going on at work.
Mm,
And that's the culture I feel like the team has with each other. I love when we have big team meetings and we're sitting there chatting to each other on the side,
yeah.
because that's the kind of familiarity we have with one another,
So
rather than just work. We're
yeah.
here only for that, and that's it.
So do you work remote, hybrid, or in office?
I work fully remote. I've
Oh, nice.
I've gone into my office 4 times, um, and they were mainly because we were going to have a meeting with somebody that normally isn't there, or um, with our senior leadership, and you had to show face. um, so I love that I can do that, but you do miss being around people sometimes.
Yeah. How did you find out about Toll Brothers? What made you, well, how did you encounter that?
So Toll Brothers was actually through a recruiter.
Ah,
um so I mean, it's in Pennsylvania, so it was close. It's still about a 35-minute drive, but I'm like, oh, it's close enough. If everything goes back to
to in person.
normal, it's still not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
um but Toll Brothers, I've known that they do well. I love their homes. They're
Yeah,
beautiful.
they're beautiful.
uh, so it was just great. Like, my admin actually knew someone that I worked on a nonprofit project with, um and he's like, oh yeah, I know her. And like, so seeing all the LinkedIn connections to the similar people, it was great, because I'm like, oh well, if they vouch for this person and this team, it makes me feel comfortable that I want to work for them, because obviously we have people in common.
Right, right.
So that was great. It just happened to be through a consulting agency, but I thought the consulting agency was great. They worked really well and really hard for me, especially considering that they had to negotiate on the fly and figure out how they're going to get me in. So
Mm, cool. What do you like most about your job?
no one's dying.
You don't have to run to a code.
I don't have to run to a code. I don't have to worry. They're not in their worst moods.
No coding in the middle of the night.
Listen, I don't like coding in Salesforce, and I don't like coding in the middle of the night. But
And
But
no
yeah,
code
this is-
grounds, right? No code grounds.
none of those.
Hearing all that.
So I'm like, no one's dying. It's less stressful. Like you get that adrenaline. You'll do what you need to do to save the person. Like it's fulfilling at some point, but it's so taxing on your body when you're in that moment of trying to help somebody, and then the outcome's not always good. And then you take that on too from an emotional standpoint, but when you're in, Salesforce, it's like everything we do is to help somebody.
Right.
It's to help make things easier. Oh, it didn't work today. Okay, I just click,
Continue
fix
to
it.
make improvements.
Yeah. And then it works, things are back to normal. And I'm like, that doesn't always happen when it's somebody's health, and you can't really go backwards and redo what happened 5 minutes ago. And that's a great thing with Salesforce. You can rewind.
Right. Speaking of that, what do you do for documentation purposes when you do make changes?
Well, we have user stories, and we tend to use Azure. There are a few different ways of keeping track. There are a few different ways of keeping track of your backlog, and sometimes I go old school and I will keep my own backlog of my own projects. Even though I'm a business analyst, I somehow am managing projects as well. So when I have a project, I try to keep track of the components that we're working on. And then each component will have its own user story, and then any documentation that goes with the user story. So for us, that all goes into Azure. Some people use Jira. That's another popular one. Trying to think if there's any other, but again, if they have nothing and you just want to keep track, Excel spreadsheet is your best way to keep track of everything. I'm color coding queen. Like I will color code my different projects. If something is held up, I'll color code it if it's held up, so that's mainly how I keep track. So lots of documentation. I try to keep track of everything that's going on and all the different features and components. Anything we're changing, I try to keep track of. I also write my own training documents so that everything that changed or was created, so that we can keep track of those.
Nice. And those are things that did you learn them on the job, or just we try to learn them even before landing a job?
I don't necessarily think you have to learn them before going on the job. I think that a lot of it, like the difference between being in healthcare, and I know I said this a lot, in healthcare, you start your job the first day. There's no learning period. There's no, Steve and Deborah work on the floor Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but I'm working with John and Steve next, like Wednesday, Thursday, like you don't get time to learn all of that. You just show up and they're like, okay, you have 3 patients today.
Jump in.
But with Salesforce, you have that opportunity to learn the company, learn what they have already created, So you can file, you can see what their documentation's like. You can see, you know, and you can disagree with it. You know, you don't have to, you know, like if they documented a particular way and you're like, well, why do you know, can we tweak it this way? And most of the time it's like, yeah, sure, as long as it makes sense, you know, but you get to see what other people have created and whether it makes sense, you know, and you might adopt it, you might not.
That's good that they're open to any, you know, a fresh set of eyes looking at what they've done.
I was told that you have 3 there. I'm like, what does success look like for you in this position in like, say 3 months? And they're like, you know who people are. That's it. And I'm like, isn't that what what happens on day 1? Like you learn who they are. And I'm like, but the thing is, you're not just looking, well, from a BA perspective, I am not just looking to learn people's names. I'm looking to learn their personalities. What works best for them? What communication style works to, you know, get them on board? How can I influence them to do the work that I need them to do? How do I keep a project on a timely manner? How do I communicate my requirements in written form? What works best for my team, you know? I've found that visualization is key for my team. They like pictures. So even if you write everything down, if you have pictures, if you have like a good process map, they love it. So
is that like having a whiteboard or something?
A whiteboard works, but like sometimes you know, you need to step back and, you know, like figure out how it goes, how like say a lead comes in, what are all the different ways the lead comes in, and then how does it translate to your opportunities, you know, and what journey are they going on? If they say yes to this thing, is it gonna, you know, it's gonna start them on this journey. If they say no, it's gonna start them on this journey, you know.
Almost
if
like
they say
close.
no again.
Almost like close.
Yes, and it is very much like a flow. So that's what process mapping, you know, like what's the process? Like, so you need to know from beginning to end, you know, what the process is for, you know, how your company does their selling. So that's important to kind of like map out how they're doing things. So it gives you a good, and most companies do have that in their documentation somewhere. Sometimes it's just, depending on how things are set up, it may or may not be easily available for you to see.
So what do you like the least about your job?
The least.
If there's nothing, then just say it.
Well, sometimes I think it's slow, you know, because you're given a lot of time to make a decision, you know, or create a solution, and then you wait for approval.
Okay.
Or you can't just make a decision by yourself. Huh?
Maybe you're just too quick to make a solution.
I don't know. I mean,
here it is. There.
Yeah, it's sometimes that's what it is, you know, but like I feel like we're all, you know, we're doers, right? We don't like, okay, we heard the problem, okay, here's the solution, and they're like, okay, well, we didn't get approval for the solution yet, so let's just wait, you know, can't create anything yet. And you're like, but I already have it created in my sandbox. It's ready.
Well, you know, at least that's a cool thing to be worried about, but it's not really something that you need to worry about. You know what I mean?
But it's that fear from when, you know, from previous work that, you're not, that feeling of you're not enough, imposter syndrome. It's like, oh, I'm not doing my job, if I'm not creating, if I'm not coming up with these solutions. And you're just like, no, that's not true. You don't have to work as fast as we did in healthcare, because now you're working in a collaborative environment. You do have to wait for marketing to tell you that they didn't like the name that you put in for a, they would rather have your object renamed as purple instead of violet,
Okay.
So, in your head, purple, violet, same difference, right? But
Right.
marketing would like it to be called violet. So if you've already created, you're not really one step ahead. You have to go back and recreate. So things like that, you have to be cognizant that it's not your own decision. It's, like I've literally had to go through and be like, what do you want to name this field? What do you want to name that field? Go through, like, some things are intuitive and some things are not. So.
Okay, what advice would you give to us newly transitioning into Salesforce?
I would say be engaged and give back. You want to give more than you get, even within an interview or a connection. You want to give yourself, right? You're going to give your personality, your love, your passion to that person so that they feel the same passion and want to help you. If you don't give anything, say I want a job and that's it, that doesn't really give me anything to go on, so you want to be able to give them something in that sense too. Give me what you like, what interests you, and that will give me something to work on and help you. And I feel your enthusiasm and I'll want to help because we all love that positivity and that enthusiasm too, and we feed off of each other. And the whole engaging thing is, we've got a ton of trailblazers that are all superheroes in their own right. They all come with, special superpowers and problem solving skills, and we learn from them. It's a community, which most jobs, most careers, it's not a community like this. We're so supportive of one another and willing to teach and learn, and having that opportunity and having all of these resources available to us is amazing. Like, I have never felt so much energy and positivity in a community, in a job before. And I think that when I talk to others, I radiate the same positivity because it makes me so excited. You
do radiate that even now as you speak. it's infectious.
I hope so. That's what if I'm going to infect anybody, infect them with love, right?
So there are some people who struggle actually to how to engage more. What tips can you give them?
Go to the events. There are, we're mostly virtual still. So I've gone to Trailblazer Community events that are in San Ramon, California. I've gone Arizona. So I literally have friends all over the country now because we meet on these study groups or Trailblazer community groups, and we're able to connect because we have one thing in common, or multiple things in common, because one, we love Salesforce, we want to learn, so we all empower each other, and I love it. I love that, like, not even just in the country, but the world, like, imparting information to people, and it's just amazing, like, to be and ask, because I have not met anybody that just totally turns me down and says no. Every single person that I've approached has either told me, okay, let's get on the books and have a conversation. If it's 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, who cares? Like, they'll still try to, reach out and like connect. In other, when I was searching for a job prior to Salesforce, it was really hard to find somebody that was willing to spend time and just talk to you. Like, you're like, oh, I want an informational interview with you. What's that? Like, so I found it hard. You had to be in the right groups. I worked with a nonprofit that was in the career education realm, so taught a lot about networking and talking. And I'm like, but there's no one to network with. Like, you're networking with people who don't have jobs either, and then it becomes more of a competitive than it was a supportive environment. I found that with Salesforce, it was very much more supportive. I think our Trailblazer stories that have been going on the past month, all of them have basically said the same thing. As I was working, I helped others along too. I didn't wait till I got to the top, got my job before I helped somebody else. Continue to help one another and build one another up so that we all rise together.
That is beautiful. For those people who, let's say they're stay-at-home mom, they have kids, they can't really go to in-person community events. How else would, what other tips would you give to them for the networking?
There's still tons of virtual events going on. There is a website which I'll give you, which has the calendar of events. It is my favorite thing.
Oh, cool.
When I didn't have a job, I was just like, I'm like, okay, every chance I get, I'm just gonna go to these events and just meet people. And and it's crazy because these people are like Salesforce royalty, you're like, oh, that person was on, and you just get so excited. It's like fangirling. I'm like,
I know. I've experienced that already. Oh my God.
I'm like, you want to talk to me? Like, I have to be honest, I'm a very, I am shy. It might not seem like it, but I am shy, but I feel like the community is one that is so welcoming that it's easier to be, not so shy.
Exactly.
So I've gotten involved in a lot of different study groups, user groups, and I interviewed to be a mentor for something, and they're like, oh yeah, we met before. And I'm like, I was awestruck that I was having a conversation with this woman, and I was just like, wait, we did meet before. I'm like, and then for some reason I had to actually like when I physically saw her, I was scared to go anywhere near her and say hi, because I was like, you don't know me, but I know you. But the truth of the matter was that she knew who I was because we'd interacted before. And it's surprising, we got to remember we're all human, right? And all these people want to give back. So you can reach out, you can connect with them on LinkedIn. You don't have to have a conversation. You don't have to like have a phone conversation. You don't have to get on Zoom or whatever. If you want to just text a couple things, I'm like, they'll respond back to you. They'll give you some great advice and you go apply it, But I almost feel like I've made friends. I haven't just made colleagues or acquaintances. These are like true people that I give, like I said, give yourself, right? I've given my heart, my wishes, my dreams to, like, I think we've talked about some of my dreams. I've talked to a couple of my friends where I'm like, oh, this is my dreams. And like every time I get an accomplishment, the person turns around to me and goes, you need to dream bigger, right? Like, so it is very easy to just find that group that does that for you, find that tribe. So, even if you don't have time, you do have that time to like do a text, reach out to that person, whoever it is that you find like, oh my God, I want to be like them. Just reach out. I'm sure that they'll want to be, want to help you. Again, I have not met anyone that is out there that has said no, or, I don't have time for you. Every single person I've met has been like, all right, let's talk, let's connect, let's figure it out. It's like, oh, awesome. Yeah, you and I have this in common. And, and most of them are extroverts anyway. If they're out there, if you know who they are, they're probably an extrovert.
But I've always considered myself as an introvert.
I did too. I thought I was an introvert, but
for some reason, this Salesforce ecosystem, the Ohana, the belongingness to the Ohana, it's just something so special that kind of invites me to get out there.
Yes.
What I mean? It's so encouraging.
Yes.
Mara, do you have any questions to ask? You are over there.
Hi. I know Lori kind of asked it, but like, what kind of hours do you work? Like sometimes I hear people say they work from like 10 to 4 or 9 to 5. Other people say whenever I'm not in a meeting, I can do whatever I want as long as my work is done. So I'm curious about that.
For me, it's been whenever your work is done. I've taken exams on days where I'm working, but as long as I have no meetings and I don't have to like get something done, then it's fine. Multitasking is obviously a skill that we all have.
Yeah.
So, make dinner or make lunch and, sit through a meeting. Sure. I've seen people's, schedules where they're like, I woke up in the morning, had breakfast, sat in on a meeting, wrote a requirement, and then did my laundry, made like a huge lunch and baked a cake, and you're just like,
wow.
Again, if you get your stuff done, most employers are pretty lax about, when that gets done. I mean, obviously you want to be available for your team. You want to, there have been nights where, especially release nights, where we're working at 10 o'clock at night. But, it also means that Friday at like 1 o'clock, I could be done for the day. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Do you have any more questions, Vera? We can probably wrap this up if you don't have any more.
I think that was my main one, and I can reach out if I think of another.
Of course.
Pressy is so easy to talk to.
Yes, if you guys need me, reach me on LinkedIn. I'm on all the time, as Lori knows. I'm very active and, always willing to help anyone that needs it. Just be willing to give me something too. Just give me a little, information about you and what you're looking for, and I will do my best to help.
Requirements, gathering requirements.
I'm gathering requirements. I need to know what you want.
All right, Pressy, this has been an enjoyable interview. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll see you online.
See ya.
All righty. Have a good weekend, everyone.
You too.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.